Well, look, Matt Stinchcomb went in pretty hard on the Gators, predicting that they would go 6-6 in 2022. I thought it was one of the more entertaining segments lately on the SEC network. And look, Matt is no idiot, and he's certainly had enough frustration with the Gators during his time at Georgia. The big win in 1997 was a huge deal, but when you're talking about somebody who has the intellectual firepower of one of the Stinchcombs, the way they put things is always delicately. And he had them going 6-6 with losses to Utah, Kentucky, Tennessee, LSU, Georgia, and Texas A&M. Here's what he said about the Georgia game, which I found, I mean, it's hard not to laugh. He said they're not going to beat Georgia this year. It doesn't look as if, especially Anthony Richardson's probably got PTSD from last year. Now, let me rewind to a year ago and talk about what happened leading into that Florida Georgia game in 2021. Let's not forget that Florida was trying to find itself during a challenging start to the 2021 season. They had already lost some some games, but there is no shame in losing in the SEC. But what happened was, although they had lost to Alabama by two and kind of cleaned up Tennessee, and the loss to Kentucky was one thing, but the loss 2 weeks before to Georgia at LSU, that was just an astonishing, you know, loss. I mean, Florida to some degree was scoring. They had scored back to, at that point in the season, they had scored 40 points or more a slew of times. They had scored more than 35 a bunch of times. The only team that they had not scored a pretty solid amount of points on was Kentucky. I mean, they even scored 29 on Alabama. But going into the Georgia game, they were 3-3, and panic had set in. And Dan Mullen, who I think is a good coach still, I think he panicked and he put Anthony Richardson in, and it just went all downhill from there. And when I say it went all downhill, I mean Georgia ended his career at Florida, Dan Mullen very specifically. And I was on the field for that game. I thought Anthony Richardson, and I don't know what the future holds for Anthony Richardson, okay? A lot of people love him. I'm not sure if I'm qualified enough to say how good or not he really is. But he was not prepared to start that game. That made no sense. It was the equivalent of what Mark Richt did with Fatone Bauta in 2015. It was a senseless decision that wound up with the head coach getting fired. I mean, I think Mark's move in many ways made even less sense the more I look at it. But um, Anthony Richardson was not ready for what he was getting into that day. I thought to me, you take the loss to Georgia and you move on to playing at South Carolina, Sanford, Missouri, and Florida State, and you just take it from there. Pretty, not a bad chance that you could sweep those last four games of the season, get out of the year going, 9-4. No one's having this discussion. There's no coaching change. But as Matt pointed out correctly, Anthony Richardson had his lunch given to him over and over and over again by a Georgia defense that was making its way for a Georgia offense that was struggling for probably only one of two times in the season. But that day in Jacksonville, and we talk about this a lot in DAWGSTRUCTION, this image you're not going to get anywhere else, period. I mean, that's the value of these books, okay? Here is Nolan Smith literally ripping the ball from Anthony Richardson. You want to know what Georgia's got coming back? It's right there. This guy ripping balls from people. Like 3 plays later, tip ball from Trayvon Walker. Here's Nolan with an interception. Looked like he'd scored a pick six, but he fell on the ground and kept running. Nolan, come on. But, the other thing, too, about that game was that Georgia's mindset was very simple. Kirby Smart before the game, and this is in the book, I'm not going to read it on here. Don't say anything to their undisciplined ex because we are disciplined and we are going to kick the stuffing out of them physically. Physically, I want to break them. That was the mindset of Georgia coming into that game with Anthony Richardson making his first start ever against the Dogs, the number one team in the country, in the biggest game of the year for the Gators. Make sure you're picking up DAWGSTRUCTION. The link is down below. 80-something page hardcover. You cannot get this in stores except at Red Zone. Make sure you're picking it up. In fact, I'll do this other thing for Red Zone. That's the only place you can get magazines. I do not have any magazines anymore. So the book is down below. If you want to get the magazine, you're going to have to visit Red Zone. Make sure you're doing that in Athens on Clayton Street. If you're at the Arch, go north one block, take a left past Mrs. Harry's, and you'll see Red Zone right there with the flags outside. I thought, to me, that the decision to start Anthony Richardson was bizarre. It resulted in a coaching change, etc. Now, Matt had him going 6-6, and at the end of this thing, he says, we muscled them to bowl eligibility. Not so bad. Matt, if the Florida Gators go 6-6 again, 6-7 last year, you're going to see people's heads explode down there. I don't care if Billy Donovan, excuse me, I don't care if Billy Napier becomes Billy Donovan. Folks are not cool with this right now. Let's just let's trip down memory lane of the Florida Gators football through the years since since Urban left. Okay, and it's not been tons of fun in Gainesville. Remember the Fun and Gun that departed after Tim Tebow and company left. 2010, 8-5. 2011, 7-6. 2012, 11-10. Excuse me, 11-2. Will Muschamp. 13, 4-8. 13, 7, 4-8. 14, 7-5. 15, 10-4 with losses to every ranked team they played. 16, 9-4. Won the Outback Bowl. 17, total embarrassment, 4-7. 18, 10-3. 19, 11-2. 20, they win the division for the first time since 16. They go 8-4, completely lay a turd in the Cotton Bowl, and then 6-7 a season ago. Georgia has had more 10-win seasons in the last four. It has had as many 10-win seasons as the Gators have had in the last 10 years. Georgia's had them in the last 4 years. I should say the last 5 years, because we did not see Georgia play 10 games in 2020. So that game, the last time they played enough to get those, I guess you could say, they certainly did not go undefeated in 2020. They didn't have the ability to play 10 games that year in the regular season. But anyway, my point is that since 2010, the Gators have had 4 10-win seasons. 4. Georgia has had a 10-win season in 20, 19, 18, 17. These are not the same programs right now. When you consider the run that Florida had with Steve Spurrier from 91 until 2002, that is the apex of Florida football. Forget Urban Meyer. Just he had 3 unbelievable seasons in 4 years there. But forget that. He also had a 9-3, 9-4, and 8-5. Steve Spurrier was never being accused of going 8-5 at Florida. He went 9-2, 10-2, 9-4, 11-2, 10-2, 12-1, 12-1, 10-2, 10-2, 9-4, 10-3, 10-2. Then he was out. Exit stage left. There was only 3 seasons, that Steve did not finish ranked in the top 10. I misspoke. Just 3. That was his first season, 99, and then 2000. Well, that was it. 90, 99. That's it. All the other seasons, the Gators were ranked in the top 10, and that's all there is to it. They haven't strung something together like that. Dan Mullen had them go in the right direction. And what Matt is touching on, which is very important here, is that this Georgia team and program, 2 things. Florida saying Florida's going 6-6 sounds crazy to those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s. But it's not the 80s and the 90s anymore. And Georgia is deadly serious about football in a way that Florida is not. And maybe they are approaching that now. But it is hard to reconcile watching a program that was so dominant and should be dominant because of where they are, have seasons like this in the last 10 years. All right, ready? 7-6, 4-8, 7-5, 4-7, 6-7. What is going on down there? Billy Napier exclusively is not going to solve this problem for Florida. This has to be a concerted effort by every single person down there to push the rock back up the hill so you can roll it back down with major momentum in the future. They know it. They know the challenge. I mean, this isn't some Georgia fan ranting. They have a real challenge on their hand down there. And people in the program, around the program, they know it. This is going to be tough. The situation that Georgia is in that time, I'll just rattle it off. 6-7 and 10, a 10-win season in 11, a 12-win season in 12, 8-win season in 13, 10-win season in 14, 10-win season in 15, 8-win season in 16, 13 wins, 11 wins, 12 wins, 8 wins, 14 wins. It's just Georgia has decided to win. Florida has not made that decision yet, or at least we don't know it. So while it is shocking to see that up on the screen, like they're South Carolina or something, that's the reality of what we're in right now.